are you? Uh, we are here with a guest that I've been looking forward to talking to, Brian James Wark. And whenever I have a guest, I almost know immediately where I want to take the conversation. Uh, but I am happily a little bit lost because there's so many places where I want to take this conversation, and all of them are absolutely fascinating. But I think I want to start off by noting when I think of you, when I read your biography that you have on your Facebook page,
hmm
the the word that comes to mind is guided and spontaneous.
Okay. Well,
Um,
yeah, I've had a lot of changes in my life, and I suppose I had to be guided to follow them. So willingly, I've lived in a lot of places. I've lived in Scotland. I've lived in uh, Paris. I've spent some living time in Israel, and I've been to Greece several times for a month at a time. I had 2 different times in my life when I traveled for 13 months straight,
well,
uh, which, when I was living in Mexico part of the first time for 3 months, I virtually lived on $3 a day. That was bus, motel, and food and
food. Wow.
entertainment. Yeah, uh,
Um,
not
what
possible here, but
what year was that?
that was 1977,
Okay.
78.
Um, what really struck me when I was reading through your biography is like you weren't you weren't a healer until you were called to heal.
That's correct.
That very moment that you were set to heal and you just healed. And that's what I meant by spontaneous. It came to you, an open book.
Well, I still didn't believe it, it really took, um, a person named Barbara Darcy Thompson, who was, at that time, in her mid-70s and a member of the Finhorn Foundation. She drew out that healing ability, and we did workshops together. She was a brilliant, wonderful, um, teacher, friend, uh, guide for me. I've
And
always I've always c connected quite readily and deeply with older people. Yeah,
um and it really just kept unfolding from that one moment. Different a deepening, different modalities, but that healing
true.
path was set. Reminds me of the script is written. You really had no choice but to be a healer.
Yeah, I remember when the head of Newbold House, where I was living, I was a member of Newbold House, which the 8 members at the Finhorn Foundation was a satellite community, and Harley said, "You're gonna be doing workshops." I said, "No," and within months, I was doing healing workshops with healers all over the world,
Um, and that
and
was
really
and
don't
then
know how that happened other than through Barbara Darcy Thompson and through
right.
spirit.
And that was in the early 1980s, right? When you
Yeah,
first started,
81, 82.
81, and it's still unfolding now, right?
Yeah, it I'm wondering how it's gonna go now because I've done healing work here in Victoria, but, um, I haven't done any teaching like I did for 10 years internationally all around the world. I haven't done any teaching since 1998, I think. So, it's a long while, 28 years.
It is. It is. Um, Brian, do you think there might be some people in the chat, even though I talk about it quite frequently, who don't know what Finhorn actually is? You think you can give a little
Uh,
synopsis?
yeah, it doesn't exist like it did. I mean, 3 years ago, they ceased doing in-person seminars. They started to do it on a small scale again for the Experience Week, but it was an international spiritual community started 1962 by Eileen Caddy and Peter Caddy, and uh, they they started it from a trailer in a trailer park, and it's just an amazing story. But there was no dogma, there was no one religion, but at Finhorn there were 3 meditations a day, in the morning for half an hour, at noon before lunch, and before dinner. So they were not compulsory, but if you were there to grow spiritually, and the meditation was a way of joining with the other members. When I was there was about 250 to 300 members, and we lived in probably about 10 different locations. There were 2 major locations, and one was a called the University of Light, which was, Cluny Hill College. It was from a former four-star hotel. So uh, the story is remarkable how it developed from 62 into the 70s and drew people from all over the world. And a lot of
Yeah.
media attention and movies were made about it, and people had genuine transformation. And what you learned there, here's what I learned. I was a loner when I got there, and I had no idea that I was going to seek to join the community. But it was exactly the best place for me to go because you learn how to love people that you didn't like.
Wow. Wow.
You know,
That's
and
huge.
yeah, it is huge.
Imagine if we had that lesson on a broader scale today,
Oh, yeah. Well,
politically.
we do through A Course in Miracles
Right, right.
because during client you are encouraged and taught to forgive everyone. And although it comes down to understanding eventually that it's a projection from my own mind, when you first start that process, you're working with forgiveness of people that you think this person doesn't deserve forgiveness. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like we have our emotional uh, locked in positions.
True.
Yeah. So
On a going down that path just a little bit farther before going back to Finhorn,
yeah, sure.
one of the things that I found is sometimes it's easier for me to forgive um, the people that I would have actively disliked at one time than
Hmm.
the ones who are closest to me that have just in a personal slight.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
and what I love about the course is, there are no small grievances. That to forgive the larger, I got to forgive the small. To forgive the
Yeah.
small,
Yeah.
I don't always like that, but I always practice it.
Yeah. Well, if I drop a spoon on the floor when I'm having breakfast and I say, damn, get angry,
Right.
that's the the same disruption of my inner peace as when someone insults me in a very nasty way,
Yeah. The, the,
equally requiring forgiveness.
the course is lovingly uncompromising about that. That there are no small upsets.
Oh, the course is amazing in terms of how it seeks to reprogram our mind to love and forgiveness rather than judgment and
Right.
sin, guilt, and fear, which we, as you know.
Um, Brian, one of the things that really always fascinated me, probably the most thing that fascinated me about Finhorn Garden is nothing really was supposed to grow there.
Well, yeah, that's true of the first story because Peter and Eileen lived in a trailer with Dorothy McLean, by the way, and 3 children. A trailer that was what 18 feet long by you know 8 feet wide. I mean, it's just astounding. They lost their job uh, unfairly as managers of um, what was the Clooney
Right.
Hotel, and they went and lived in their trailer because that's all they had. And uh, yeah, it was an incredible, uh, how do I put it, compact learning, intense learning. That's when they learned how
Right.
to work with the devas, particularly Dorothy McLean, and
Um,
grow food on virtually sandy soil. And of course, they became famous for their huge cabbages or whatever.
right.
There were plants that, because of that cooperation with the Davidic kingdom, they were able to grow amazing species of and plants that should have only grown in, Africa in a
Right.
hot.
Um, could you explain a little bit about the devas?
Um, well, it's the spiritual component of the plant kingdom, and there are some people who have just a natural ability to connect with the Davidic kingdom and can cooperate with them and take instruction and grow um, plants in very unusual conditions and soil. But they're part of the spirit world, and for some people, the Davidic kingdom is just as real as a dog or a cat.
Right.
Yeah.
As you were saying that, my cat was just here trying to get my attention. Um, you have, um, in your own way, continued with that tradition um, because you're literally communicating with the spirit of the driftwood that you connect.
Yes. Well, I have a friend who said I am the wood whisperer, and uh, if you looked around, this is my studio apartment where I live. There are 100 sculptures within 15 feet of me.
It's
Uh,
amazing to consider. Driftwood. Some driftwood is um, literally, for one, who knows how long it's actually been drifting before it came up on
well,
shore.
who knows the story of it? Yeah, where it came from and how long it was in the ocean, how the salt of the ocean changed its composition, how it lost features and gained features, and then landed somewhere in shore, and who knows how long it stayed there before it drifted out again to another place.
Right?
Yeah,
You ever
yeah.
you
So
get
I look for unusual wood that has already a story or features that I can then work with. I cut with a saw, I file, I sand, I wood burn, I create features, and I might have a piece that's 18 inches, say, long, and it suggests to me maybe a dozen faces. There may be a dozen faces on that piece that I have worked with and brought forward, and some of them will be kind of difficult to see. People have to really focus and concentrate.
right,
And I'd say only about 10% of the population actually is interested in this type of sculpture because it starts with nature. Nature is the co-creator with me, and then spirit takes over, and it isn't. Sometimes it isn't actually very beautiful. It may be very disturbing to look at a piece, for
right.
example.
Well,
I'm
you
going
don't
to show I'm going to show you a few pieces.
sure.
This was from this dancer was from. Can you see it?
I can.
Was from an apple tree, an Italian lady in Toronto. She had a beautiful, huge garden, and she asked me to come, and there was a branch that was blown off by a storm, and this was what I made with it. This is, can you see this one here? Where my finger, I don't know what you can see because I'm not, yeah. This, you can see one branch has wound itself around the other, and I made two snakes out of it. That
Uh,
Yeah, so,
oh, I see the
cool.
snakes.
I'm not going to go through that many. This is an elk in migration. This is Puck from Midsummer's Night's Dream.
Uh-huh.
To give you an idea of, yeah, that you probably can't see them very well, and yeah, but
I love that you said co-creation. That
yeah,
you are, a lot of uh, a lot of times we hear artists talk, and I hear my painting, my sculptor, my whatever. But I think every true work of art is is going to be a co-creation. Co-creation.
yeah, and of course, according to A Course in Miracles, it's not creation; it's co-making.
Co-making.
But
Right. Right. Exactly.
but yeah, certainly you really surrender to what wants to come through from the piece of wood.
It all seems again when I consider your healing work, when I consider your artistic work, when I consider your spiritual path, it all really seems like you surrender. Um,
Well, particularly in the last 3 years, I've really realized that it's time to deal with what's at the bottom of the well, the spiritual lessons and challenges that maybe I had too much fear to actually tackle, or it meant a disappearance of my persona that I was enchanted with, my hero of the dream.
right.
And so that dissolving of that persona has been the main focus of the last 3 years. And
Um,
things continue to fall away. Just relationships. I'm living in Victoria. Uh, most of my friend connections are back in, the Ontario area, my family and so on. And so I have an enormous amount, this great gift of time to do what I need to do to face and focus on my spiritual path.
I
Yeah.
want to. I'm going to go down that road a little bit with you.
Okay.
We have a friend in the chat who asked if does the wood need treatment every now and again?
Oh, I treat once I've done everything that I think needs to be done, I do 3 coats of varathane, and varathane does preserve it pretty well. I mean, these pieces will probably last maybe hundreds of years.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I don't know for sure because I haven't had a test of hundreds of years, but
right.
yeah, we know that wood. There are obviously wood houses that have been built in the Tudor times of England, for example. Yeah.
True. Um, so when we're talking about that surrender, and you're talking about the letting go, um, especially as you said, the hero of the dream. I always love that expression, hero of the dream. For one, it sounds so romantic, but it's not exactly what it's. Well, it's not who we are, and it's not
No,
exactly
it's true.
who we want to be.
Yeah, it's who we wanted to be and who we put all our energy towards being when we didn't know what our spiritual goal was, to
Right.
surrender and to open to Holy Spirit and oneness. I mean, that was one of the things about Thinhorn. I mean, the idea of oneness was there. That was my first experience of really living in a community with people from all over the world, and that our idea was to live together in oneness, equality,
Um,
and unconditional love.
You just mentioned it's been in the last 3 years where you really feel like you're fully fully surrendering and opening
as best I can.
as best you can. What's what I find fascinating and hopeful is that you had your first awakening experience at a Ram Dass seminar, right? In like 1979.
Oh, that was just, yeah, that was just, it wasn't, I wouldn't call that a big awakening experience. I mean, Ram Dass was always a hero of mine. I'd listened to him on the radio, giving talks, and I thought, geez, this guy really knows the truth. But when I attended the workshop in Amsterdam on my way to Finhorn, yeah, I had spent 3 days in that workshop, but it wasn't what I would call a huge awakening experience. My Ram Dass awakening had already happened a lot with his books and his radio programs that I listened to quite a lot in Vancouver back in the 1970, 71, 72. Yeah.
It's interesting to consider, from those let's call them humble moments to this point in your life now. Uh, what do you think? What were the hindrances that didn't allow you to open up the same way that you are now? Let's say in 1979 or 1989 or 1999.
Well, you know, truthfully, probably one of the major gifts of my life has been relationship with women, deep connective relationship with women. On the other hand, it also has been what has held me back spiritually at times.
Mm.
So, both things happen, and there comes a point when you realize that something that was effective at bringing truth and love to you at a certain point then becomes a hindrance. So, yeah, that's a bit of a paradox, but I would say that in the last 3 years, I have come to realize that special relationship is a hindrance. Holy relationship would be a tremendous benefit. Uh, and I thought that I had um, linked up with a person who we would be in holy relationship till the end of our life, but it turned out just to be 2 years. But we continue to be friends, and I continue to learn spiritually with and through this person. But letting go of the need to live together in the same space and be romantically involved, I'd say that that has dropped away for me considerably in the last 2 years, particularly.
Hmm. Remember reading Richard Bach, uh, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, and Illusions, and he wrote a wonderful book where he found his what he considered his soulmate, and they were actually together for 20 years. And
Uh-huh.
when they parted company, a lot of people were heartbroken because
Yeah,
they said, this book helped me believe that I can find my soulmate and that I could live
mhm,
happily ever after. And both of them replied that sometimes two people come together for the sole purpose of learning how to let go.
sure. Yeah, that's. I mean, letting go is a big deal. Spiritually, it's a very, very significant deal because what A Course in Miracles invites you to do is an enormous process of letting go. You're letting go of your whole ego world, which was the world that you functioned in, and it was the world that all my senses confirmed was true. The idea that God did not create the world. I remember when I read that in DU uh, first, and I go, hmm. It's like, and that essentially it was a projection from, well, me,
Right.
us. Yeah, it was astounding letting go of how I thought the world was.
Was
And
that when you first came to it? Um, was that a hard thing to digest? Was there a certain level of disbelief that
yeah, I mean, I still have to pick myself up spiritually and say, whoa, this is not the true world. This is not,
right,
the this is not reality. This is a dream illusion. It still takes some work inside my mind to fully embrace that.
um, I understood Maya. I understood the yogic and Buddhist principle of the illusory world, but A Course in Miracles took that um, a whole nother step farther and deeper than not just being, when I think in terms of illusory, I think, well, so there's a world and it was created by Brahma, but it's not the world that I see. It's just the world that I'm experiencing now. But in A Course in Miracles, they're saying not only is it an illusion, it's not here.
Yes.
It's a big
Yeah.
step.
Well, that's what
Yeah,
illusion means if you really
right, right.
think about it. Yeah.
The course just seemed that, I'm going to use this term again. It just seems so much more uncompromising in a very loving way, but it doesn't give you room to maneuver out of it. That, um, you know, if I think in terms of Maya, they almost presented as Maya as being confusion more than illusion. That, it's just a misperception of who we are and where we reside. But that deep non-duality of A Course in Miracles, that there is just God, and we are ideas in the mind of God. That we are there now, and we are dreaming this entire universe into existence. And as a matter of fact, um, that not only are we uh, dreaming, the dream itself is actually over.
Yes. And, it was over that one instant that never happened.
Right.
Uh, but our idea of it is that it has extended 10 billion years or 13.8 billion years or whatever you believe is the duration of the universe.
Right.
It keeps increasing. But, think about it. I mean, we go back in history, maybe as far as 5,000 years with the Egyptians and, go back to uh, the various cataclysms that's happened. But to go back a million years is already a huge jump in my awareness. But to go back a million years, which is a billion,
Right.
it's just astounding.
It
And
is.
yet, A Course in Miracles says it never happened. It, happened in an instant, and all of history happened in an instant, and it's already all over. Uh, it's an incredible leap of awareness.
It is, and it is also the ultimate key of awakening. Um, that none of this uh, actually really happened. We're literally in review of a dream that never happened.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm sure that if the Buddhists, the true deep Buddhists who were enlightened or close to enlightened, understood Maya quite differently than the popular idea of it. But yeah,
Right.
I was aware of Maya before I was aware of A Course in Miracles.
Right.
But it was like a concept that made sense. But did I actually feel like I was living it? No. Yeah.
That I definitely relate to that, Brian.
Mhm.
That's the way I feel. Uh, with yoga, I got some great, great, great concepts and helpful concepts.
Sure.
But
Do you still do yoga?
I do.
Yeah, so do I. I've done yoga for 55 years.
Well,
Uh, I broke a collarbone playing hockey when I was at university, and I after that I would have once a month I go, be like going like that because my neck would be screwed up. So I realized I didn't want to be going to the chiropractor once a month to get fixed. So I taught myself yoga from a book, Richard Hittleman, and I have continued to do it essentially. Well, I do yoga probably
shoot,
6 days a week.
I
Yeah,
have
in the
that.
morning I go to beautiful Sachs Point, which is a 15-acre virgin forest, a point that juts out into the Pacific or the Strait of Juan de Fuca. And God, it's so beautiful. It is so beautiful. There's birds, there's the ripple of water, the trees, and I'm just so lucky to live in this proximity. It's literally, the beginning of the park is 100 steps away
Oh,
from where I
nice.
live. Yeah.
I have that yoga book on the shelf back here.
Do
Um,
you? Richard
and
Hittleman?
uh-huh,
Oh, it's great. It's a good book, isn't it? I mean,
it
the
is.
photographs are so specific. How can you go wrong?
My one of my very first exposure was Jess Stearns, Yoga, Youth, and Reincarnation.
Yeah, Jeff Stern. I read probably 3 or 4 of his books. He
Right,
was a good writer.
very much.
Yeah,
Uh, Brian, we have a question. Is the acknowledgement of the illusion actually the real reality?
I don't understand the question.
Um, so, do you think you can reword that a little bit? Let me see if I can unpack a little bit. Is the
Okay.
uh, is the acknowledgement of the illusion actually the real reality? Um, so, by acknowledging the illusion,
hmm
um, is it that the acknowledgement itself? Can we say that the reality is seeing through the illusion, through reality itself?
What's the say that sentence again? Is it that the
So, the acknowledgement, when we acknowledge the
yeah?
illusion, is that our return to reality?
Um, yeah, I believe it is. I mean, just hair trigger response. I believe it is. I believe that's what I am pointing my life towards. That uh, Holy Spirit, Christ in reality, that we are, that you, I, 8.2 billion people, and all the other beings that populate the universe are all part of we're all one, which, is just incredible to think. We are all one and we all in that oneness joined as one is a line from A Course in Miracles.
Right.
Oneness joined as one. And I've started to begin to understand that and feel that. It was very perplexing to me at the beginning, and probably
Me too.
still is to a certain extent. But I'm beginning to feel it. I'm beginning to feel my movement within it and not be so afraid of it because I was afraid of losing my identity. I mean, I was proud of my hero of the dream. I had spent a fair amount of time building the hero of the dream's characteristics,
Right.
you know.
That's it. That I think you just you put your finger right on the main issue of that final little awakening. That I love thinking that I am one with God. I can even think of you as being one with God. But hey, I'm one over here and you're one over there. Um, for I've had those thoughts of individual ones forever, and
Individual one. So that's that's an oxymoron if there ever
it
was
is.
one.
But that's very often on a
Write
spiritual
that
path.
down. Individual ones or individual oneness. Huh.
Both of
Yeah,
those
go
work.
ahead. Say
And
some more.
we don't want our individual oneness to be imposed upon by your individual oneness. Um,
Yeah, we are guardians of our still guardians of our identity,
right. Uh,
however we now characterize our identity.
right. And we might have a very spiritual identity, and that's a hard thing to let go of. Um, you know that hey, I've meditated myself into my oneness, and your oneness can't take that away from me. Um, I've yogified myself into my
Yoga.
oneness.
Yeah.
Um, but that is really the last thing that we cling to, the last little spiritual identity of our uniqueness in the mind of God.
Yeah. It does help. The range of books um, in A Course in Miracles by Kenneth Wapnick, who I knew and was, a minor friend with. I mean, we exchanged letters quite a bit for a number of years. I had him come to Toronto to teach a seminar in 2008, and I think it was the last seminar or one of the very, very last seminars he did outside of Temecula. Um, but he wrote about the subject you're bringing up,
Right.
and he lectured about it and talked about it in just a brilliant way with humor and clarity and knowledge of how frightened we were to let go of our identity, whatever identity that we had moved to spiritually. And he knew they all had to go.
I
But they
have a
had
I have
patience, himself and us.
right.
Yeah.
I have an imaginary Kenneth Wapnick that pops into my mind and
Uh,
reminds me of that quite frequently, and also loves to remind me when I feel stuck in any particular issue that it's because I am dealing with effects, that I'm rearranging effects and I'm hoping for a better effect. Uh, when all I'm ever going to get in a world of effects, no matter how I arrange them, it's always and only going to be an effect. That if I want anything different, I have to go to cause.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, that was another difficult area of understanding for me, cause and effect. Probably
Right.
still struggle with it somewhat, but but I suppose the simplicity for me is all cause comes from love and forgiveness. All cause comes from that. And so if you have the right cause, if you have, then the effects will be beneficial.
Right. To take care of themselves.
Yes, they do. You get the
Um, yeah, my imaginary Kenneth Wapnick is very uncompromising in his uh, conversations with me.
oh,
Uh,
his shattering, but lovingly presented, and with
right.
compassion for us. You know, I mean, he had all kinds of students who had studied with him for, towards the end. They studied with he and Gloria for 30 years or longer, and still were having problems releasing, letting go. And he knew that. He said, he often said, for you who have studied, 15, 20 years, whatever, you still are blah, blah, blah. And he would point to where they needed to consider moving and how. That was the great thing about him. He was able to give you the how of it.
Right. Do you think
Yeah.
towards the end of his life that Ken was able to let go of that last sliver of self identity?
Well, I'm in no position to say, but I believe so. I believe he was enlightened,
Right.
and that he chose to move out the gate with cancer was another important and final demonstration of A Course in Miracles principles. Don't judge the outer. Know that that was a demonstration of how to be like Jesus was without any pain. The spears went in and he felt no pain.
Right.
The cancer rages and you feel no pain. He taught, you know, yeah, he died, what, December 27th or something like that, 2013. But I think he taught right up until the end.
Mm. I
And I
remember
don't
reading.
think Gordon knew that he was going to die. I didn't know he was going to die. I was still talking to Ken in 2013 about coming to Toronto again. He said, "Yeah, oh yeah, I will."
Well,
Like I, it was a kind of a shock. But if you look at uh, those incredible 10-minute seminars he gave all the way through the last year, they're brilliant. I mean, they're just brilliant. And he was in full command of his spiritual presentation.
mm,
So I think he's a wonderful demonstration of going through something that we would tend to judge as problematic, but it was actually a demonstration of the highest spiritual attunement.
nice. Um,
One man's opinion is mine.
sticking with this theme, sticking with your own, arriving to a point where you feel like you are surrendering more. Um, Sort of want to bring this to the manual for teachers, and specifically the 10 characteristics of God's teachers, and then even more
Hmm.
specifically to developing trust, which has been my what I feel like my great work, um,
Hmm.
because I
Hmm.
lack it. Um,
Yeah.
in 2026, I've decided to largely um, work more on that than on the workbook. After years of going through the workbook, I
Hmm.
felt that this is a point where more than anything, I I need to learn to rely on that trust, which is another way of saying surrender, which we you and I were talking about. Um,
Hmm.
has that you had mentioned that it's taken you quite a bit to get there.
Oh yes, it's taking every bit of ability I have to surrender. Yeah, to let go of the hero, the dream that I had built up, and even I believe that I may have actually. I had a car accident when I was 10 years old, and I could have been killed in it. I was unconscious for 3 days,
Well,
and I think I made a decision to come back into life as I came out of that unconsciousness. But I think I was. Uh, this is kind of tricky territory, but I think I was given a guide. And it may not have been an entirely fully realized spiritual guide, but I certainly received that guide and was aware of it at 10 years old as amping up my abilities. I started scoring 5 goals a game playing hockey, for example. I was in a game one time in a tournament as my team. We won 8-1, and I got all 8 goals. And they
well,
started saying, "Work 6, Chesley 1." Like it was. I had, and I skipped a year and I started the year early at school, and I got high marks all the way through, and I didn't quite believe myself that I had these abilities. I graduated first in my class at the University of Waterloo, mathematics, and I didn't feel I had really that ability or capacity. It was just like something was moving through me, and I felt that that was operative throughout my life, and, I realized 15 years ago that it needed to go. That was not fully spiritually attuned. It was something like Ramtha. I just say something like because I never
Right.
I have a friend who went through Ramtha, and I have other friends, but, it was like special abilities, but it wasn't the oneness of A Course in Miracles.
We can, well,
So
yoga warns about that. The development of cities, the psychic powers that can be very, very
yeah,
fascinating. And, anyone who meditates for an extended period of time is going to develop and experience some of those cities. But that's not the end result. We don't
no,
want to get stuck in that.
you don't wanna get stuck in it is so true, and I realize that, the metaphor I use is a well, and down in the muck at the bottom of the well are the lessons that I didn't wanna learn 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Right.
Wasn't that I was lazy or whatever, just that they were too fearful. They meant dissolving my persona, my hero of the dream, and now they're up. They're up out of the muck being worked with,
Right.
and that sort of guide, I basically disconnected from that energy some years ago consciously with awareness.
Did you feel any psychic repercussions? Did you feel like a sense of loss?
Oh, yeah, I felt a sense of loss because I felt like, it had paved the way for me, that expression, "paved the way."
Right.
I really was given a lot of gifts in my life, and I often would meet famous people and make an impression on them, and, every 2 years of my life, I seemed to go to a new area of endeavor and would do well in it.
Mm. Brian, did it affect your healing work when you cut those ties?
Yeah, well, I wasn't doing really a lot of healing work, per se. I I I stopped traveling the world. When I left the Finhorn Foundation, I became a healer with, the radiance technique with a
Right.
very advanced teacher called Dr. Barbara Ray, and, I taught really in about 10 different countries and, in 30 communities in Ontario, uh, the radiance technique. That was my life for about 10 years, but it was finished about 1996, 97. Yeah. Is another thing where, people wanted me to keep on teaching, but I knew that it was not my spiritual path anymore. There's a well, I don't know to tell you this story or not, whether it's a story that basically around, King Lear type thing where you know that an area of endeavor isn't appropriate any longer. It's no longer your healing path any longer. And I wrote an article for Healing Magazine when I was living in London, Ontario, and teaching all over the world. I taught in Romania, I taught in Bolivia, I taught in Venezuela. I was just given incredible connections. I taught in France, I taught in Britain, traveled to Egypt and went to all the sacred sites with Dr. Ray and about 25 teachers of the radiance technique. So I had amazing experiences, but one part of me knew that when that was over, it was over. And so I wrote this article 2 years before the end saying the king must die. And I was the king who must die. All the sort of approbation that I got from being a teacher and helping people, it was that cycle was coming to a close, and I was staying longer than I really should have. And I knew that. That was what the article was about.
Um, is that
Does
when?
that make
But it did. Before I go to the next subject, which is that around the time that you found, or the course found you? We have a question from the chat. They want to know if you've heard of Colin Bloy from Britain about 40 years ago.
What's the last name?
Bloy, Bloy. Colin Bloy.
No, I don't. I don't. I'm not familiar with that name, but maybe just because my memory has
Right.
ceased to function well. But no, I don't think so.
Okay. When
I lived in Scotland at the Finhorn Foundation from 1980 to 1983. So I left 1984, 16 plus 26, 42 years ago.
42.
Like yeah, well.
Did well, of course, as you mentioned, you maintained some ties. Dorothy was a dinner guest for you. Did you ever go back just to visit?
Yeah, I did. I went back in 1992 with my daughter Gaia, who was 6 at the time, and my wife Veronique, who I had been at Finhorn with. Veronique and I were married for 12 years, and she was from Paris, France. And we were considering going back and rejoining the Finhorn Foundation.
Hmm.
And we went back for 2 weeks in 1992, and that decision we did not rejoin. I interacted with Eileen, who was a friend, and did some healing work with her and connected with the community, but it wasn't the forward step that I thought it was going to be.
Right. Were you there
Yeah.
when David Sprangler was associated with the?
Yeah. Well, I've I've heard David talk several times, but he was not living there when I was there. I became a member in the autumn of 1980. He pretty much was related in terms of living at Finhorn, I think 73, 74, 75, 76. Yeah.
I always
He's
appreciated the
still alive.
honest. Yeah, I think he had his last book. I think was 2020 or 2022.
Mhm.
I always appreciated his spiritual honesty. He seemed to be living his life out loud. He sort of disassociated himself from the. He was lumped in with that new age movement, and he really wanted to differentiate himself from that. What he felt, I think, was much more ancient than what could be considered a new age movement.
Right. Yeah, well, you couldn't help but be startled and impressed by David's connection to spirit and his guides. But I haven't followed him really for probably decades. So
Right.
any relationship I had with his work was when I was at Finhorn, pretty much, or before I was at Finhorn. Yeah.
Um,
And he would come and he'd be at the conferences quite often as a speaker, and
right.
it was always
Brian,
wonderful to hear him.
I wonder if we could try something real quick. There's a bit of a lag. And I don't want it to sound like I'm interrupting you. Um, could we try to continue the conversation without the headphones and see if that helps the lag? And we'll see.
Turn this off.
Let's
All
see
right.
how we sound.
All right. Can you hear my voice okay?
It can.
Hmm.
And I think that's fixed the lag a bit. So I think we're back
Okay.
on track.
All right. Well,
So we
it's also better for me not to have the headphones on.
good.
Yeah.
Um, so we were continuing with uh, Finhorn, and we were talking about surrender. Um, at what point did the course enter your life?
2000, the year 2000. So I encountered a copy of A Course in Miracles probably 1978 when I was attending a Finhorn workshop. I wasn't a member yet. I was just there. And I remember reading it over, that evening. Someone had lent it to me and going to saying, this is beyond where I am right now, or beyond where I want to be. What I know is my next direction was really turned out to be the Finhorn Foundation, living in the international community with unconditional love being my pointer.
Right.
But yeah, the year 2000, I was living in Parry Sound, which Northern Ontario, which is a very beautiful place. It's on the Great Lakes, and yeah, I attended a autumn workshop about this new thing called A Course in Miracles, which I didn't know much about, even though I was spiritually active in other things, and I wasn't sure that it was going to be a direction for me. So I attended the, I think, bi-weekly workshops or get-togethers without buying a book. I never bought a book for 9 months.
Wow.
Uh, so I didn't have to have that experience of throwing the book against the wall or putting it in the garbage. Once I got it, I was ready for it.
I can't think of a better training ground than being steeped in the practice of unconditional love for what 20 plus years.
Yeah, no, it was very important for me to open myself to that kind of universality of the Finhorn Foundation. Like I met people from every part of the world and every age and every social class. So it was a wonderful introduction to, oneness in a way that I could handle at that time of my life.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was it? Um, and at what point did you know the course was for you? And what was it? What did it?
Mm. Well, hey, I ended up having the group meet at my house for 2 years. And it was like 2003, 4. I already knew once I bought the book that A Course in Miracles was going to be my direction, and it has been for this 26 years.
Right.
Haven't been drawn to go to workshops and so on like I used to do because I was so much involved in that healing environment, and so I was invited to a lot of things. But I I just knew once I bought the book, I knew that that's what I was going to do. And I had a friend, Terry Rhodes,
who is still alive. He had cancer in 2004, and he had already been a course student for a number of years and had gone through quite amazing transformation. But he and I would, we would, after every meeting, we would go to Tim Hortons and talk for 3 hours about the course.
Right.
And but how it applied to our lives at that time and what we understood. Yeah, so I've been active with applying it and looking at where I'm confused or not understanding. I have strong intuition, and my intuition is often my guide. But I have not been someone who has visions or, you know, gets guidance that way, and I've quite often drawn women to me in terms of relationship that do have those abilities. So I'm a little like Peter Caddy of Eileen Caddy. I have my own strong intuition, which is my spiritual barometer.
Right.
But I also deeply value those who have the capacity to have vision and deep insights that they can share. And yeah.
What about in terms of revelation? I often hear a lot of talk on revelation in course communities, almost like a download. Um, we're given this greater uh, understanding of the metaphysics, sometimes in one swoop.
Hmm. Yeah, it hasn't been um, currently in this lifetime so far a gift that I have been given.
Right.
So, you know, Art and Persa in Gary's books say that a person may have already had revelation of the lifetimes. They're not needing or wanting spiritually to have that, or, it just isn't the appropriate thing. But it doesn't mean that they aren't. So I don't know.
Right.
I have not had it this lifetime, and I really admire and when I talk to friends that have had revelation as part of their spiritual unfoldment, I I salute them. I honor them, and I honor what they bring forth from it.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, for me, it is often felt as small revelations spread out over a course of time. I think the Holy Spirit knows what I can handle and what I can't handle. So those um, portions, I like to think of it.
Mm. Well, I think revelation is a very specific thing, and there is a definition that it's God speaking directly to you, and in a way that you probably can't even uh, speak about accurately
Right.
after.
Right.
That it is something that touches you so deep that your life is never the same again after. So I don't.
Uh,
Yeah.
right. And some people are literally unable to speak about it for some time
Hmm. True.
afterwards.
Yeah.
So, uh, Brian, we have a
You, you know.
question.
Lloyd and Stephanie. They're very good friends, and I'm in touch with them almost daily currently. And Lloyd has had more than one revelation
Right.
experience, and it's interesting listening to him talk. And yeah, but it's not something that I have had. But I'm also at peace with whatever is the time frame for that to happen for me,
Sure.
whether it's next lifetime or next
Lloyd,
Tuesday.
Lloyd and Stephanie have been, they've become great teachers for me.
They have.
Uh, they've both been up a couple of times. Uh, I always mention when I have when I have almost any guest and I'm talking about the course, um, I am slightly altered
Hmm.
afterwards. I feel lighter. Uh,
Hmm.
I really feel that it becomes a holy communion, and that every guest has something that
Hmm.
they're going to share that is going to be is just going to elevate me that bit more than previously.
Yeah, it's quite a gift you've given yourself to have this program.
I agree, and it really is. I'm bringing great, I'm bringing great teachers, and of course, the course says we're all teachers um, and students at the same time. What a wonderful opportunity for me to converse with
Hmm.
you, with Stephanie, with Lloyd, with so many uh, people who, again, they just have exactly what it is that I need to hear, and I don't even know I need to hear it until it
Yes.
comes.
Right. Well, there aren't all that many people that feel they need to hear about the development of trust at the fifth stage, which is the real ball buster. Like
It is.
you know that
Um,
the description of it in the course really needs to be paid attention to. That it is difficult. You may be here a very long time, and you need very high level help to move through it.
it's harrowing is the word that I use when I
Harrowing,
w-
good
yeah,
word. Yeah.
when when I got it. My first instinct was nope. I'm not, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna go through this.
That's who said I didn't sign up for this.
Exactly. Is there another big blue book that I can read instead of
Yeah.
instead of this one?
Did Jesus write another one? I feel that Jesus writes a new Course of Miracles book every day because I go back and I go, geez, I never saw this before.
I'm glad you
I
said that.
I never, and I go, I say the brilliance of this paragraph just blows me away, and I
Right.
go, I mean, I would I opened the book to lesson 333, which Lloyd, Stephanie, and I have talked about a number of times. But forgiveness ends the dream of conflict here. And there's such
Right
a
after that.
brilliant lesson available in that paragraph that I just, I've read it maybe 10 times, share it with people.
Um, I'm glad you brought that up. That it sometimes seems like a different book. 30
Yeah.
years ago, I read chapter 5, description of the Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit being the voice of God. And I kept that with me for a long time until recently. And I read it and I thought, wait a minute. It says the Holy Spirit is the voice for God. Why did I miss that for so many years? And what a huge difference one word, actually, really, one letter of one word makes. The voice of God is it's a beautiful thought, but it
Mhm,
keeps God a little bit distant from me. I
mhm,
can hear the voice of God from way up there or way over there or wherever. The voice for God residing within me, residing within you, is intimate and it's powerful and it's ever present right now. What a huge, huge difference that was for me.
mhm. Yeah. Yep. It's amazing at a certain stage of spiritual development, words could be very, very significant. For me, they are significant. And, for example, take the word illusion. If you break it down, it's ill, us, ion.
Right.
Ion's a negative ion. It's a negatively charged particle. Ill, us, illusion. The
Wow.
illusion brings ill to us through negativity, through
Um,
through grievances. That word grievances is, it's like the other side of forgiveness. And
right.
how often we fall into grievance with our of our physical things as our body things.
True.
You know, quite often, when you're with people of a certain age, all they're talking about is what's wrong with their body, and that's been me sometimes.
It's me too.
Yeah, like
Uh,
what do I
I
know to talk about? Well, my knee is, it's like, yeah,
I just turned 61.
yeah,
And I'm in good shape.
yeah,
I work out every day. I run every day.
yeah.
Spent a decade as an ultra runner. I've been a power lifter, a bodybuilder. But aging's difficult, and I'm finding that my practice of forgiveness is meant to cover every aspect of my life. That I need to forgive my judgment
Mhm,
of aging, my judgments on my body, my
mhm.
thoughts that this shouldn't hurt, that I should be, uh, whatever, at 61, I should be more uh, settled in certain aspects of my life. And it's all just lessons for forgiveness. And aging is a big lesson,
Oh yeah, because yeah, particularly if you've been proud of your health and your body.
right?
Pride precedeth a fall.
It does. I was at
Yeah.
one point, I was very, very proud of my long, long blonde hair.
Uh,
And Holy Spirit took care of that lesson pretty quick
yeah.
at about the age of 30.
Wow, really? Gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true that wherever the pride resides, that's where it's going to come and challenge you.
Yeah. Um,
You know, I have a body that um, has been in really good shape. I mean, I weigh the same as I did when I was 16. Like I'm 184 pounds, and I'm 6 foot. Probably have dropped an inch in the last 5 years, so I'm probably 6'1" rather than 6'2". But yeah, I was always proud of my body and that I could do different things. And when I played sports, I was always considered a top player until I stopped, and blah blah blah.
right.
I mean, I graduated in mathematics in the University of Waterloo, which is one of the top mathematics universities in the world. And they have a Bachelor of Mathematics degree, which I have. But I couldn't do a differential equation now. And I graduated first in my class in 1969.
Well,
It was just like what we took pride in at a certain time. It's like gone, wiped out. It's not even remotely available.
um, how easy has it become to let that go?
Well, the mathematics, pretty easy. I mean, I do have a mathematical sensitivity, but in terms of, I couldn't do a differential equation now. Probably I'd have to be instructed.
Right. I'm not even sure I can pronounce. I'm not even sure I can pronounce that, Brian.
Hmm?
I'm not even sure I can pronounce that, let alone actually do that.
Oh,
So,
differential equation. Yeah, yeah, and-
we had a question for you.
yeah.
Going back to your driftwood. Um, when
All
looking
right.
for
So let
drift,
me just say that it's not driftwood. It's wood that may have drifted, and it's also, a lot of my sculptures are from the forest. They're not
okay,
from the water. So just so you know that driftwood tends to bring a certain uh, limiting awareness that it's just what the tree and the sea created. That there isn't really a co-creation going on. So
right,
yeah,
um,
I call my stuff driftwood, although some of it has drifted.
right.
Yeah.
They want to know: is it the same? Does it seem to be the same spirit or mind that is present during the carving? And you ever feel the muses are the driver?
Oh, I feel it's a spiritual process. And yeah, I don't carve. I mean, I literally don't carve. There are beautiful carvers out here, and many of them are native, and they create pieces of wood. that are just astounding. But I'm not a carver. I am a sculptor in the sense that I bring forward something that is evident in the wood, and I want to bring it forward so it's visible and has a story to tell or a lesson to give. And the amazing thing about these sculptures is you turn them 30 degrees, you got another sculpture.
Right.
Every sculpture, maybe 5 sculptures, given just how you set it. And I often look at pieces and I go, I never saw this face before. This is an amazing face. This is a face of, oh, such joy or such agony. And I never saw it before. And I worked on that piece for 22 hours or whatever. You know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that story with Michelangelo and David when he was asked, "How did you ever carve David in that solid block of stone?"
Yeah.
And he said David was already in the stone. He just took
Yeah.
away everything that was not David.
David. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah. I remember reading that. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I've had the pleasure of exposure to great art in, you know, art museums in London, England, and in Toronto and Vancouver and Victoria and in Israel and in Greece. And so it's I am not really a trained artist at all. I just did what I did, because I was, inspired to do so.
Right.
It does, you know, and I'm
Um,
aware, this the type of art I work with is not, it doesn't appeal to a good number of people.
were you
I
always
None of the people who think they love art.
right?
Yeah.
Were you always artistically inclined? I know you mentioned sports and you mentioned scholastics. Was art something that you considered a talent early on, and was just something that sort of
Oh,
spontaneously arrived?
yeah. I wasn't. I wouldn't have been considered, someone who was an arty person particularly. I did some drawing and so on when I was a kid, but it
Right.
wasn't a big deal. I only started doing this work with wood maybe 30 years ago.
What did it come as a surprise?
Northern Ontario, I think.
Did it come as a surprise that, oh, one, I feel drawn to do this, and two, I can do this, that I didn't know that I had this particular gift.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it was pretty pretty basic at first. It just, I did it because I liked it. I liked what I was doing. But in the first few years, it probably wasn't too attractive to people. But I had a friend who was very, she lived in Northern Ontario, and she was very artistically inclined, and quite often we would go hunting for wood together in the woods. And so I I grew into doing this type of art by my exposure to Northern Ontario woods
Right.
and just extraordinary pieces that said, "Geez, you've got to do something with me." I'm extraordinary. Yeah.
It's a beautiful area there. I camped out at Algonquin Park, um, which
hmm
I believe is probably a little south, maybe, of the area that you were in.
Well, it's actually east, but it is in the territory. Yeah. hmm I
I
haven't
re-
spent a lot of time in Algonquin, but yeah, it's a beautiful place.
yeah, I really loved it there. Um, so, do you experience maybe carryover from your Finhorn days as far as communication with nature spirits when you're in the woods or you walk in the coast? Or
Yeah, I do. I suppose I do. I wouldn't necessarily characterize it that way, but you know, walking through the woods at Sax Point on the way to, the water where I do yoga, overlooking, on a cliff overlooking the waves coming. It's just gorgeous. I talk to the birds. They go, they have their songs of mating and so on. And I I characterize myself as singing back to them.
Right.
I try to imitate their songs sometimes. But, I know that I'm a Mickey Mouse version, but I feel like there is some back and forth exchange. And, I'm trying to, it's just like the same thing with dogs. I mean, there's, when I go to Sax Point, I might encounter 5 different dogs with their owners, and 3 of them might really connect with me. I might say, "Do you mind if I say hello to your dog?" And they'll say, "Oh, it's pretty shy, or it might bark, or it might jump up on you." And I have wonderful experiences, and
Right.
some of them don't want to, meet me, and I think, okay, fine. But that interaction with the birds and the dogs at Sax Point each morning is part of my balance and inspiration.
Um, yeah, being out in the woods just in my neighborhood,
Mhm.
has become such a hugely valuable part of my life for decades, really. Every morning I see foxes, beaver,
Oh,
um,
lovely.
and they are so. Um, I actually had the experience just the other day. Making the sound for that you do with a dog. And I heard a splash, and a beaver just came swinging in my direction, posed for a
Mhm,
couple little film clips, and then went about his way.
mm,
It's just amazing when you begin to feel cooperative
mhm.
with nature instead
Yeah,
of any kind of resistance.
that's a good point. Sometimes I go, at night, like 10:30, 11 o'clock, walk through the woods. You can, they don't shut it down. They can't shut it down, but there's very often nobody there. And I go to maybe a point that is somewhat out into the water, and I listen to the ripples and the swells, and they cleanse and purify me. It's like a spiritual experience, listening to the movement and the infinite rhythms of the ocean. Yeah.
Beautifully said. So we do it if you don't mind. One or two more questions, and then we'll wrap it up. We've almost
Okay.
got 90 minutes in it, an amazing conversation, and I still feel with you that I've only skimmed the surface. Um, so I hope maybe sometime we'll do a part two and go a little bit deeper still.
Oh, okay. Well, that may be. Yeah. Thank you.
Um,
Hmm.
we have a question of um, do you see a lot of faces in live trees when you're out in the forest? Can you see an expression?
Well, sometimes, but yeah. I actually touch and say hello to trees as I walk through Sax Point, morning and night. I will, I mean, there are certain trees all the way along the path there. I mean, they're huge. I mean, the trees that go up 80 feet into the air,
Wow,
Douglas firs and hemlocks and so on. And I don't know trees very well. I don't know the types well, but I, yeah, I feel like they're sentinels, and that they are guardians, and that they carry energy and they hold energy, and that it's incumbent on me to appreciate them and interact with them.
amazing! More and more what we're learning about trees and forests and the interconnectedness. Having a mother tree and how a forest will actually keep a stump, a fallen tree, alive. Um, it's amazing.
Well, I just saw a good example of that 2 days ago. There's this dead stump that is this big, like maybe 5 feet in diameter, and it's dead. But there were 4 or 5 trees growing out of it.
Wow,
Like,
I love
you know,
seeing that.
trees with, girth of a foot or whatever, like
Right.
not just little branches, like full trees with leaves. And yeah, because it does show the continuity and the extension. Yeah.
Um, my last question, and this is going to be a little bit off the wall. You are in you're in Sasquatch country.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Any feelings? This is for a friend of ours who he's in Washington State, which is part of Sasquatch country,
Sure.
and he has felt that energy. And I wanted to ask it for him because he's a good friend.
Yeah, I'm not one who has personal experience, but I talked to a man 2 years ago at a healing weekend. Like it was a conference, and he knows Sasquatch
Wow,
personally. He's interacted with them person to person, and I talked to him about half an hour about it. And it was so that's as much as I know, other than he talks about different areas on Vancouver. Well, there certainly is an area in Vancouver Island that Sasquatch beings are alive and well. I understand from him,
nice.
and also
Right.
in the province of BC, there's a lot of wild areas that still can support life of that nature.
Right. I have read there's mountains in Washington State and British Columbia that have yet to be climbed because the forest is so dense that it's just almost impossible to navigate through.
Hmm.
So it doesn't surprise me that there are places. I also considered uh, that Sasquatches and the like are more uh, interdimensional beings, able to um, go through a different dimension. So it's not surprising that we don't encounter them on a daily basis.
Right. Yeah, I think we are on the verge of a lot more interaction with other species from other planets. And, that's a whole other territory, and it's not
All other territory.
really.
It is.
Yeah.
Um, so, Brian, I appreciate your time very much.
Okay. Well, I've enjoyed talking with you, Eric. And yeah, it's always good to expand our awareness of what is possible through other people.
Agreed. Agreed. Um, and as mentioned, uh, always feel lighter, and I always feel that I've received a valuable gift from every guest. And I want to thank you for what you've imparted on me, and for this time that we spent together, and your time that I see you on Facebook for being a valuable teacher for me.
Yeah, I feel like I'm so Mickey Mouse on Facebook. I mean, I'm learning how to use the medium, and
Right.
I make mistakes, and sometimes I'll put something on the story or a post that I didn't intend to, and then I go, oh, well, that mistake must have been there for a reason.
Right. It finds the
Yeah,
right person.
yeah, yeah.
And as a matter of fact, it's exactly how I did find you.
Ah,
So, no accidents,
yeah.
you know?
So no accidents. That's true. Yeah. Well, yeah. And as we go deeper into our journey, that's certainly.
Right.
I feel it's more and more dreamlike. all the time. My living on the planet feels more and more dreamlike. In other words, the illusion is becoming more tangibly an illusion
Right.
to me, if I might put it that
If
way, which is a strange way of putting it. But
if I am fortunate to have a further conversation with you up here, that is one thing I want to talk about for sure. That the it's come to my attention from the text, which I haven't spent a lot of time reading, the celestial speed up, um, where one of the original lines in the course before it was edited, uh, that the course came ahead of schedule because of the celestial speed up, because the collective ego is uh, getting worse.
mm,
Um, as well, I really want to continue our conversation on trust, because as I mentioned, that is the theme for 2026 and beyond for me, is opening myself up to the extent in each moment that I'm able to put that trust, that I am guided, that I am cared for, that to live that I am here only to be truly helpful prayer, uh, and allow the voice for God to speak for me when I need that voice. I'm
mhm,
not there, but I have great hopes, that in every little moment of surrender, I'm one step closer.
mhm, mhm.
So,
Yeah, and forgiving ourselves and acknowledging the process of forgiveness, and the first line of lesson 333: conflict must be resolved. It cannot be evaded, set aside, denied, disguised, seen somewhere else, called by another name, or hidden by deceit of any kind, if it would be escaped.
wow.
Yeah, it's like being honest with ourselves.
Yeah. Um, and that seems to be a process. We're, I
Yeah,
think we're as, I think we're as honest as we can allow ourselves to be at any given time. And if we can be aware of that, we start becoming even more honest.
yeah. Letting go of judgment is really important, as that's the implication of what you're saying. It's like,
Right.
and
Judgment.
accept someone without conflict, without opposition, even though they might be saying something that you can't possibly agree with.
Right. Right.
Hmm.
Letting go of that judgment. And for me, letting go of still no small amount of fear. The fear that
Oh,
I'm not connected, the fear that I'm not connected as much as I should be, the fear that if I surrender, I'll flounder. Uh, there's still that threshold of fear, even after 30 years, that uh, I've yet to reach through. But I feel that I'm on the abyss. Do you ever read any Carlos Castaneda?
yeah, I did probably 20 years ago. Yeah,
Right.
I did read about 3 or 4 of his books.
And his final act was leaping into the abyss. Um, and
Literally? He
yeah,
literally did that. Oh,
he
yeah.
literally did that. And I feel like I'm on the abyss, and I tiptoe up to the edge, and I go, nope, not yet, not yet, not yet.
Well, yeah. Hmm. Well, this journey is the abyss as well, but it's knowing that it doesn't have to be frightening.
Right. That's huge. That's
Sin,
huge.
guilt, and fear. I mean, fear is the consequence of sin and guilt, and
Right.
it's all about dedication to the illusion instead of and how those remnants are still rattling around in our psyche sometimes.
So there was Brian. That was it. That was the gift that you had for me.
Mm.
That last thing was just huge for me.
The abyss.
Thank you so much. That
You're
we
welcome.
don't. Um,
You. Mhm.
I feel like I'm on the abyss, and you're urging me to take that step. I
Uh-huh. Well,
appreciate that.
do it with love in your heart, and that you're guided and protected. Know that you're guided and protected. Sometimes in the day, I'm here, I'm making a meal or something. I go, thank you, God. Thank you, Jesus. And I do it spontaneously. I'm just learning to let go of the big deal stuff and just be spontaneous,
Right.
appreciative. Yeah.
I remember to practice Ho'oponopono, the Hawaiian art of
Hmm.
forgiveness and reconciliation. For
Yeah.
when I'm making my breakfast, I'm washing an apple, and
Yeah.
I, I want to erase all the karmic ties and be grateful for everything that was involved in bringing that apple to me. The truck
Hmm.
driver, the cashier, um,
Hmm.
the picker, the owner of the orchard, the tree, the seed, the earth, the rain. It's amazing how far we can trace that back. And every single one of those, um, giving thanks to the cashier is giving thanks to God. Giving
Hmm.
thanks to the seed is giving thanks to God. Uh, that life of gratitude is just that's been a revelation for me. How far can I take gratitude? And I find that it's endless.
Oh, it's true. And, a miracle is a change of mind. That's the simplest definition and the one I use the most. A miracle is a change of mind from the ego mind to Holy Spirit mind. So every time you're grateful, you've changed. You've done a miracle. You've changed to your higher mind. Every time that you smile at someone, that's a miracle. Every time you laugh and let something go, it's a miracle. So a
I love
miracle is
that.
a change.
Brian, you have made it exceedingly hard to say goodbye to you, my friend. Um,
Okay, well, all right. Well, thank you very, very much.
thank you,
And
my friend.
Eric, you have a wonderful day
You
and be
too.
well. Okay.
Guys, I will see you all later tonight. Take care.
Okay. Bye bye.